Well, that's quite the way to open a new video about the new WebDirect technology. I'm Richard Carlton from learningfilemaker.com, and I want to welcome you to a quick overview about the new WebDirect technology. Now in this video, I'm going to give you an overview of this new technology and show you how it works and how to take advantage of it, and really give you some insights as to how awesome this new technology really is. Now first off, I want to point out that the solutions you saw in the opening video were created by FileMaker developers with about 3 or 4 weeks of experience, which is pretty amazing. So for those of you who think that this WebDirect technology requires rocket scientists to program, you're totally wrong. And that's really the cool part about WebDirect. So now that I've got your attention, let's get things rolling here. As I said, my name is Richard Carlton. I'm the CEO and Senior Engineer of RC Consulting. We have a staff of 27, headquartered in California, also with offices in the Dallas, Texas area. I've been working in the FileMaker business now for 25 years, and most recently, we've created a new publishing company called learningfilemaker.com. Now, the people watching this video will be people who have some familiarity with the FileMaker platform, or people who have never worked with FileMaker at all. However, both groups are welcome here, as I'm happy to explain how this WebDirect technology works and how you can take advantage of it. So first off, let's cover the basics. It's important to understand that the FileMaker platform consists of a number of different products that allow you to create and deploy a complete solution for your business or organization. And of course, when I say business organization, that includes a number of educational institutions as well as nonprofits. So you have FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Pro Advanced. And that's the software that you're going to run on your Macintosh or Windows computer. And that's where you're doing all your development of your solution. That's also the preferred tool for accessing your FileMaker database if you're on a Mac or Windows computer. So it really does double duty in being able to do both development and client access to the database. Now, FileMaker Server is a software that publishes or hosts your database on the company network or out across the internet. Now, once the database is being hosted by FileMaker Server, you can access it with a number of different technologies, which is really cool. And that, of course, is the basis of this video. Now, you can always access it with a Mac or Windows computer with FileMaker Pro. And that's historically consistent. It's been this way for more than 20 years. Now, over the past 5 years, you've also been able to access it on your iPhone or iPad using FileMaker Go. And that's software that, once again, is specifically written for the iPhone or iPad. But what makes the FileMaker platform rock is the release of this new version of WebDirect. And WebDirect pretty much allows any modern Android phone or tablet to access your FileMaker solution. So whereas in previous versions of FileMaker, there really wasn't a good story to tell about access for Droid devices, FileMaker 14 explicitly brings support for mobile devices which are using the latest versions of the Android operating system with the latest versions of the Chrome browser. This is extremely cool. It allows you to develop and deploy your solutions to about 90% of all the mobile devices that are in use out in the public worldwide. Now that last 10% is a mishmash of BlackBerry devices, of Windows Phone devices, and some other miscellaneous operating systems that are not necessarily compatible with WebDirect. Now at this point, I need to call a timeout on the field. I want to make sure that everyone understands this web technology allows browser access to FileMaker databases without any programming. WebDirect will fundamentally take your FileMaker solution and will render it and reproduce it and make it accessible on a modern browser. Now, the browsers supported include the latest versions of Safari, the latest versions of Chrome, and the latest versions of Internet Explorer. Now, it's important to understand that FileMaker has certified Android tablets and Android phones for use with WebDirect. But the critical takeaway here is that normally when you're building a web interface for your internal staff, or maybe you're building a web interface for your outside vendors, typically you'd go out and hire a number of expensive developers to sit and code a solution for you in PHP or AngularJS or some other advanced technology that a vast majority of the public has no idea how to pronounce or even what it is. Well, with WebDirect, all you have to do is drag and drop with your mouse in FileMaker and build it, and FileMaker is going to render it straight out to the browser. This is really cool stuff. So once again, to be clear about this, WebDirect is the automatic rendering of FileMaker layouts and behaviors to a web browser. So if you're familiar with FileMaker at all, you'll understand that there are FileMaker layouts, there are FileMaker scripts, there are fields, there are script triggers, there are all these objects and elements and components that make up the FileMaker world. Well, FileMaker WebDirect automatically takes all these things into account and renders them and reproduces them visually in a modern browser. It's really quite amazing what they pulled off. Now I'm going to show you a quick demo here. On the left, we're looking at FileMaker Pro with a basic starter solution. And on the right, we have a web browser. Now FileMaker Server is taking our database, which is on the left, and automatically rendering it to a web browser that's on the right. That's WebDirect. And as you can see, I can tab around in our database on the left and make data entry changes. I can also do the exact same thing on the web browser in the window on the right side. And as you notice, the rendering looks pretty close on both windows. That's what WebDirect is. It's really cool. And we get to benefit from all this without any PHP programming or any programming at all. It was all handled automatically by FileMaker Server, which publishes the WebDirect to the browser. Very cool stuff. Now to show you how easy it is to customize in FileMaker and then have it rendered to WebDirect, let me show you this. FileMaker is a WYSIWYG graphical interface, meaning that you can actually build what you see on screen with your mouse and drag and drop elements around on the screen. And then those elements will render automatically on Mac and Windows, of course, but they also automatically render into WebDirect. Let's say I put a different button over here to replace this next follow-up button that you see right here. Well, I can go into layout mode in FileMaker Pro, and I can access an entire array of tools across the top of the screen. And all I have to do is actually drag them down off the top and use them on the screen as I see fit, without any fancy programming. Once again, extremely powerful. I'm going to go ahead and grab a button right here. I can find buttons and they can do anything. Let's say the button says amazing things. And then I can put a icon on the button, and that icon capability is now part of the FileMaker platform. So that's a new feature in this product. I can say import amazing things, and there's a little bit of artwork right here. And yeah, the artwork needs to be a little bit bigger. Let's do that. And we could do something like that. And I can close the window and maybe make it look a little more square, something like that. Put it right there, back to browser mode, which will save the change, and then we look at it in Pro, and then almost instantaneously it updates over to WebDirect. And so we have a functional button right there. And once again, it's really cool, and I keep saying it's really cool, but it is. I mean, what other technology are you going to do this? Where you're going to build it on a Mac, and it magically works in Windows, on iPads, on iPhones, and on pretty much all Android devices. I mean, give me a break, right? Now that I've said this, let me point out a couple things. WebDirect was first introduced in FileMaker 13. Now, as much as I am a fan of WebDirect in FileMaker 14, I was not a fan of it in FileMaker 13, because in FileMaker 13, it was a little slow, or it was a lot slow. However, it's important for me to clarify that WebDirect in 14 was completely rewritten and it's brand new technology. It's way, way, way faster, and not by a little bit, but by huge magnitudes faster. In fact, some of the biggest improvements is just in the WebDirect technology. It's really quick. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But something else to note, I want to reinforce this, is that if you want to publish WebDirect, you have to be using FileMaker Server. So your database has to be installed on a piece of software called FileMaker Server. Of course, FileMaker Server software should generally run on a dedicated computer, and that machine itself is frequently referred to informally by people as their FileMaker Server. They may be also referring to either the hardware or the software or both, so just kind of keep that in mind. So moving along, I want to dive into this quick demo of WebDirect. I'm going to put in the addresses. And I have a choice here, of course, of looking at this in list view or with the icons. And I'm going to select FM starting point for English. I'm going to click. And almost immediately I'm prompted for the security code. Now the security that you see right here is exactly the same security that you would have in FileMaker Pro or FileMaker Go. It's all the same security system. And now I'm going to put this in real quick, and almost immediately WebDirect renders a screen for us. So it's pretty quick. In fact, in a moment I'm going to show you how this compares to WebDirect in 13. Now we go over here to contacts, and we can actually see and recognize that we have our new status area up here, or status toolbar. Now I'm going to flip through some of the records here, and you're actually going to notice how fast this goes. It's actually pretty quick, including with images and with notes all drawn. This is actually really quick. In fact, I can click through here and tab. I don't know if you can see how fast this is actually going, but it's really quick. In fact, normally, as I flip through records here, this is actually going faster than I can visually process the data with my eyes and brain. In fact, that's one of my benchmarks for speedy computers or speedy databases. If the software can go faster than the user's brain, then I'm happy about that. You run into problems with users when their brains sit there and they wait for the computer or their database to catch up with them. So just keep that in mind. Now what I want to show you real quick is the vast improvement with WebDirect over version 13. Now I talk to people about FileMaker all the time, and I've heard this from some of them, and they say, well, you know, I don't know if I should upgrade to the latest version of FileMaker. Maybe 13 is just good enough for me. Well, how about you don't pay for the upgrade for FileMaker? Let's just say that you want to suffer through with the old version of the software. And I can show you right now the benefits that you're going to receive when you upgrade. So let's just pop open WebDirect 13 in another window. And I'm going to snap my fingers here. So here I have another window. And this is going to be my window for 13. And I'm going to go ahead and select FM starting point for English. Now remember, over here I clicked on it and the password came up immediately. So I'm going to click on this, and that's not too bad. And I'm going to go ahead and set up my password. And it opens up and renders. All right, right on. So we're ready to go. I'm going to go over here and select my contacts, and it renders. Excellent. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two videos of flipping through the records side by side. And 13 is going to be on the left, and 14 is going to be on the right. And my post-production guy is going to put both videos side by side for you. So, all right, ready, set, go. And as I'm clicking as fast as I can in WebDirect, you'll see the allowable speed on the same computer with the same browser. And like I said, we're playing both videos side by side. And you can actually see the real world performance. So this is a good representation of the performance gains you're going to see on a laptop or desktop computer. As you can see, 14 is outpacing it by a long ways. And once again, that's the same data, same database, same computer, same server. It's identical. So now I want to go and show you another test. This is going to be side-by-side tabbing. This is where you're tabbing between fields. In FileMaker 13, this was really one of the weaknesses of the product. In fact, it frustrated a lot of people. And I'm going to show you the huge benefits, once again, of upgrading here. I'm going to put them side by side. I'm going to tab as fast as I can. Once again, there's two videos that are side by side. I have 13 on the left, 14 on the right. We're going to start tabbing in the same place on both left and right. And if we get to the bottom, we'll just start again at the top. So, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. And as you can see, we're tabbing, and it's much faster on the right side. And the tabbing, well, it's about twice as fast on the right side. And that's how much faster WebDirect 14 is. It's been completely re-engineered. It's radically improved over FileMaker 13. There's just no question about that. So that demonstration goes a long ways towards potentially justifying its cost if you're interested in building your own web-based solution without contracting and paying a ton of money for a PHP developer or programmer. Of course, there are positives to building a PHP-based website. And of course, there are positives to building a WebDirect-based website as well. So there's trade-offs that go back and forth for each of those. But now you have a choice between two technologies. And you can sit down and actually make an educated decision between the two. If you have questions about that or want to talk about it more, I suggest you contacting a well-versed senior FileMaker developer or contacting someone on my team, and we can talk about the advantages of development either way with PHP as opposed to WebDirect. So the next major point we need to discuss is really this kind of earth-shattering news about the FileMaker platform. And really, we alluded to this at the beginning. It's truly a big deal. FileMaker engineered WebDirect to be able to be released and used on a Chrome browser. And that really means all these Chrome browsers that are running on Android devices. So here you can see an Android device running the latest version of the KitKat operating system. And that's the latest version of Chrome. In fact, this Android device is more than a year old. It's not even the latest current technology. And this is also a simple starter solution, running on FileMaker Server through WebDirect. Now, I wanted to do a demonstration like we did before with Android on WebDirect 13 versus Android on 14. The problem is that Android on 13 was so horrifically bad, it was totally unusable. So they took something that was really totally unusable, and they've made it snappy and very useful. So it's not something I can really demonstrate in 13. But if you want to set up a demo and cause pain for yourself, just play with WebDirect 13 on an Android phone. So FileMaker went way out of their way and spent tremendous amounts of engineering resources to bring WebDirect to mobile devices that are generally underpowered. So the performance improvements are really kind of crazy in terms of on the Android side. On the desktop side, they're about twice as fast for WebDirect, but on this Android side, on this mobile device side, the performance improvements are insanely crazy. You know, it's like 2,000% faster or 20 times faster. It's really nuts. So with all this being said, there should be a tremendous round of applause and thank yous for FileMaker Engineering for doing such a fantastic job with the FileMaker platform and for optimizing their product for a whole group of devices where before we really couldn't even deploy solutions to that class of hardware. Now, if you have an old Android phone or an old Android tablet, FileMaker does recommend that you run the latest hardware for that platform and to make sure that you update to the latest version of the Chrome browser. That being said, WebDirect might work on older devices, but you're going to need to test your solution to make sure it's going to work well with an acceptable level of performance. And this gets into the idea of building lightweight applications for these devices. If you're building a robust, heavy-duty invoicing and billing and customer management system, and you want to roll that entire thing out on an Android phone that's 2 years old, now that's going to be potentially problematic. But if you need a lightweight interface for your sales team to interact with leads or maybe invoice information, something like that, then that might be a good application to run on an Android device that's a year old. You're going to need to test that out before you start making commitments on what that hardware is going to do. It's really important. And of course, officially, FileMaker is only recommending the latest hardware on the Android platform. The reason I'm telling you that you can use a little bit older hardware is because I've been sitting here playing with it and testing on it and I can tell you that it works. Now, the same goes for iOS devices. We really haven't talked too much about iOS devices, but iOS devices can run WebDirect. Now, the question is, do you want to run WebDirect on iOS devices? And you have a choice because you can run Go or WebDirect on iOS devices. Now, if you want to run WebDirect on your iPhone or iPad, once again, FileMaker is recommending that you should be using the latest versions of Apple hardware. Once again, their standard line. They're saying use the latest iPhone and the latest iPad. Of course, I've tested WebDirect with older versions of the iPad, like the first generation of the Air, and it's working just fine. So just keep that in mind. Now, on this issue of choosing the client for your iOS device, personally, I think the user experience is going to be better for iOS users with FileMaker Go. And that's because FileMaker Go is going to have additional access to the integrated hardware components of these devices. And that brings all sorts of premium benefits. You're going to have precision access to the cameras, precision access to the signature capture. You're going to have literally precision access to the barcode. When I say precision access, I mean that you can script it if you want to go that deep and tell the user to put a signature in here or put a barcode in here. And those two capabilities pretty much are not going to be available on the WebDirect devices. Although there is limited support for image capture into containers on WebDirect. So you don't lose all of it, but if you really want a really refined experience, well, that's what FileMaker Go is going to bring you. But keep in mind, FileMaker Go is a much more mature product. It's been in market now since 2010. So, a more mature product, it's going to have better features and tighter integration with the hardware. So my general recommendation is to push your iOS users to FileMaker Go by default if you don't have a specific reason to do otherwise. I think the sweet spot for WebDirect is always going to be for devices where there are no FileMaker clients available. So that's pretty much anywhere where you don't have Macs running, Windows running, or a modern iOS device running. And the first thing that most people think of course, is Android tablets or phones. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that WebDirect does not formally support printing or PDF generation. So if you have a report and you want to print it, you can actually go up under the browser menu to File and Print, and it will just print the screen in a web resolution, which may not look very good. But the real awesome print capabilities that you're used to seeing in FileMaker Pro, and for that matter in FileMaker Go, don't exist yet in WebDirect. And that's the high resolution, really refined printing capabilities that are part of the FileMaker platform. They're just not in WebDirect yet. And this is super important because it gets into the positioning of WebDirect as opposed to FileMaker Pro and how you position these products within your organization or maybe to your clients. With this in mind, WebDirect does fill some important niches for the FileMaker platform. FileMaker Pro is the tool that you're going to use for construction or development of the FileMaker solution. So if you're building the FileMaker solution where you're making edits under the hood of the FileMaker solution, then you're going to need FileMaker Pro or Pro Advanced, and those run on Mac or Windows. So that's important to understand. Now keep in mind, the inverse to this is that there is no construction or development of a solution in FileMaker Go or WebDirect. That capability is not there. FileMaker Go and WebDirect are purely consumption tools or clients, as we like to call them, for accessing the database, which means they can read the database, they can edit the database, they can even delete data in the database if the security allows for that. Now, FileMaker WebDirect is going to be really handy when you need to access a FileMaker database and when there is no client software available for a particular computer or device. For example, Android devices or even Chromebooks. During our testing, we've tested Google-based Chromebooks successfully, and they've actually worked very, very well with WebDirect. Now, FileMaker has not certified the Chromebook OS for use with WebDirect, but the Chromebooks use the latest version of Google Chrome. And by leveraging that, I've personally tested and had very good success. But once again, that's another situation where there's no FileMaker client, and we're able to use WebDirect to get access onto those devices. But you should test that technology before you promise it to a customer. Now, WebDirect could be useful in another situation, and that is where you have lightweight users who don't use FileMaker very often. Or maybe they use FileMaker in a very minimal way. Maybe you have an outside vendor. Maybe periodically they have to log in and update inventory numbers. Maybe they're part of your supply chain and they have to log in and update the database somehow. And really, if you think about it, they're a third party to your company. They're external to your organization. So licensing-wise, it gets kind of sticky to even give them a copy of FileMaker. Well, WebDirect would work very, very well in those situations because all you have to do is give them the URL to your FileMaker server. And of course, you're going to need to set them up with an appropriate username and password that gives them the limited access that you want them to have. Now, of course, there's a third area that's really handy for WebDirect, and it's almost a little kind of guerrilla warfare in a way, and that is deploying WebDirect for users whose IT organizations are not being overly cooperative, shall we say, in the installation of FileMaker Pro. Now, we do run into this periodically where we say, hey, here's FileMaker Pro, and the users don't have administrative access to their machines, so they can't install Pro for whatever reason. And so those people never get access to FileMaker, which is really too bad. Well, giving them access to a URL to WebDirect at least gets them using or consuming the data of FileMaker so they can read and write data to the FileMaker database and gets them contributing to the database system and really bypasses IT in that case. So some additional notes, FileMaker servers will allow up to 100 WebDirect users to connect at one time. But if you're pushing up against that number, odds are you're really stressing your FileMaker server. So that's why I recommend ratcheting things back a little bit. But keep in mind, supporting 100 simultaneous users will require probably a more beefy FileMaker server. So always consider upgrading your FileMaker server with solid-state hard drives and more memory than what FileMaker says is the minimum. So that gives you a pretty good overview of what WebDirect can do and where it might be usefully deployed.